everyone, and welcome to the Core Devs episode 80. I am going to get started on the first agenda item. It looks like it is the EFI EIP review, and the first one is going to be EIP 1930. That's Calls with Strict Gas Semantic, Revert if Not Enough Gas Available by Ronan Sanford, aka Wighawag, or however you want to correct me, Ronan. You can go ahead with kind
It
of an
sounds correct.
explanation.
Yeah. Yeah. So should I start explaining what it is?
Yeah, if you could explain what it is. And did this come up last meeting? I wasn't here.
No, it came up last, I don't know, many months ago for the previous art fork. It was also proposed. And I remember having a call briefly mentioning it. But yeah, I mean, so I can describe it. So basically, currently, the EVM opcode for like the call opcodes, you they have a gas parameter, and this gas parameter is basically only a maximum value, so it only protects the caller for spending that much gas, but it doesn't have any guarantee for the callee to receive that amount of gas. And so this causes so I mean, in itself it's okay, but then there is use case where we need to be sure that the callee receive exactly a specific amount of gas. The main one is meta transaction, for example, where the signer of the transaction specify how much gas is in a call. And so the contract need to ensure that. And currently there is no perfect way to do it. I mean, the obvious way will be to compute like the based on the opcode, a specific opcode pricing that can change what is required. So it means that it's possible, but then it's very brittle because if there is opcode pricing change like it happened, then suddenly it might break. There is actually another solution, which is to check for the gas left after the call, because you can know that if like basically since 164 is left, you can compute that, okay, if there is less than 63 of 64 of the gas that was necessary, then you can guess that there was not enough gas. But this is also not perfect. So I described it in more detail in the issue, but basically the proposal is to so there is two way to so there is two options for the proposal to work. One is to make the simplest, in my opinion, is to add 3 new opcodes that have the semantic of if you don't have enough gas to make the call, then it revert. The other option is to try to see if no contract are using specific range of value. And so this way we don't need to add new opcode, and we can just say, okay, if maybe the first bit is set to 1, then we interpret the rest as a strict gas value. And if it's 0, then we can interpret as before. The reason why it might be possible is because Solidity, for example, is never using so one like 200 to the power of 256 minus 1, because it's more costly than actually calling the gas opcode to know what amount of gas is left. So yeah, that's kind of I think I did a round of the thing. But if you have any question, like
Yes, I have a question.
yep.
So yeah, I'm still not clear about the motivation behind it. You mentioned meta transactions. So the two things I'm not clear about. One is the actual use cases and why this is needed. And the second thing is why can't this just be solved by checking gas opcode post
So
facto
yeah.
or in the receiving contract, whatever that is.
So yeah, so we want to solve it in the caller, not in the callee, because that's the logic of the caller might be dependent. So and in the caller, if we can, as I say, we can compute the gas cost required based on the amount of data, etc., to kind of pre-compute. There is two issues with that: is that it's dependent of the opcode pricing not changing, and the second issue is that it's a waste because you are computing something that the EVM is already computing.
Yeah, I can understand why that's a bad idea. I just don't see the reason for doing it in the first place. So if you could expand on that a bit.
Oh yeah, for the use case, I mean, yeah, so in meta transaction, there is two way kind of to for the relayer to do. The first implementation of meta transaction was actually very simple. Is that the relayer was taking responsibility of the whole transaction not failing. So is that he makes the transaction. If it fails, then it's his mistake. He should have checked that it was not failing. But it's a lot harder for the relayer because you need to consider everything. So every reason that the call might actually fail. So what the newer implementation do, all of them, is that the signer of the meta transaction specify the amount of gas that it wants to be given to its call, and then the meta transaction processor will basically pass that amount of gas to the call. And if the transaction fail as part of the call, then the caller, the meta transaction processor can assume that yes, indeed, it's the signer did a wrong calculation of the gas limit, so the relayer should not be punished for that, and we basically pay the relayer. The problem is that all of these implementation, except a few, they actually, the only thing they do is they say require gas greater than the gas required, which is actually not sufficient for that.
Why is that not sufficient?
Because there is 1/64 of the gas left anyway. So it means that even if the gas could be higher,
so if they do require gas plus and then a 63rd extra.
Yeah, that's what I mean by being then opcode pricing dependent.
How is that opcode pricing dependent?
Because you need to compute what the call will actually cost, the extra gas, the extra thing that you need.
But you could basically, what you could basically do is the person who creates the meta transaction could just specify I need to be called with 64 gas instead of 60.
Yeah, exactly. So then you are pushing the security outside of the contract, which is what Gnosis Safe decided to do. So there is an issue on the repo. They decided to fix it on the UI side, where the UI actually increase the gas limit so that it protects the user. But I think it's basically moving the security on a layer that it should not be.
I see. So yeah, my comments about this one would be, I think, first of all, I think it goes kind of against that other direction which we have, which is to try to remove the visibility of gas.
Actually, no,
secondly,
on the reverse, I would say. Just on that point, because I think it's actually reverse, because if the call will allow you to specify the gas, then the caller will not even need to ask for what is gas left. Because without that opcode, currently, as you said, they need to check the gas and try to do some computation to make sure it's enough. While if we add a proper, a strict gas semantic, then there will no need for the caller to check what the gas available.
Yeah, maybe. So okay, I'll hold with that judgment then. But I still think this is kind of solvable today, like you said, the Gnosis did with on, which makes the UX maybe a bit worse. But on the other hand, I think introducing 3 new call variants, or basically duplicating all the call variants to solve this kind of niche use case.
I mean, I think to call it, niche, I think it's, I mean, it doesn't matter really whether it's niche or not, I feel like, I mean, and we could argue actually whether it's really a niche use case, but I mean, it should have been the semantic in the first place. Like the reason that it's a maximum, actually, I mean, the use case for a maximum is probably more niche than the use case for a strict semantic.
Yeah, I agree, but there are a lot of things
yeah, of course, but that's what I mean. Like we could argue. I mean, I don't think it's a valid argument to say something is niche or not. I think let's focus on whether something is better or not, because what we are going to solve now might help us to design a new EVM later. So I think we should try to do something. I mean, anyway, so I just want to go back to the point of 3 new opcode, because in the proposal there is 2 options. One is 3 new opcode, and that can, and then the other option is to find gas values that have never been used before, which might be tricky to kind of check, but that's also another approach that will, yeah.
I have some, if I put on, my Alexi isn't here today, so me putting on my Alexi hat, how does this, because he's working on evaluating whether to do ungas or to do something else that allows stateless to happen. So those kind of gas, how to work with gas changes he's currently working on. Have you looked into ungas and how perhaps your proposal might be different given that scenario? Or really, I would just suggest talking to Alexi, figuring out.
I looked at ungas. I mean, I listened to the last call. I mean, ungas itself at its very big question anyway. So I don't think we should. I mean, so first of all, is that imagine we add the strict gas semantic before, and we want to move to ungas. It will be the same as now to move to ungas. So what I mean is that we should not defer something just because maybe ungas will happen if it doesn't change the matter.
Yeah, and that's part of what I'm wondering is, because Alexi's also thinking of the other side. I guess it's not so much that I'm saying let's wait because down the line a solution is coming. I don't personally like doing that. I know that something is needing to happen with stateless Ethereum to have to work, and Alexi's currently working on that. I'd encourage you to go to talk with him about ungas and then also his alternative to ungas to see if this is something that is how it interacts. Because I guess what I wouldn't want to see is this gets implemented, then it gets unimplemented. And
so, I mean, if we go with ungas, then this will be unimplemented, except we'll have to live with it in the existing clients. And when I talked about the niche, I didn't mean to like disparage the use case or anything, but I was kind of meaning that we have lots of quirky things about the EVM which should have been made otherwise with perfect hindsight, but there's kind of a big threshold to fixing these things, and I think for the amount of work that needs to be put in order to fix this, if you weigh that against the benefits, so which in this case to me seems kind of small, since it's not like we're enabling a totally new use case of doing something we couldn't do before. This, I mean, we are just improving it a little bit.
We are fixing basically a security issue for user of meta transaction. Like,
I don't really see how we do that.
Yeah, it does, because like if you look at for example, Gnosis reasoning, like Gnosis safe is currently vulnerable to relayer making the transaction fail and getting paid for it.
Yeah, so the user specified the wrong amount of gas.
Yeah, but no, I mean, even if the user specifies the correct amount, then it's fail. Of course, you could argue that, yeah, but they can add a 64 whatever, but but the point is that then we are basically moving the
So
security
you can do the calculation on the EVM side of adding the extra 64th, which costs around, I don't know, 10, 20 gas. And if
Yeah,
they
but
have a
again, I
margin of
mentioned already that
200
that's
gas,
not
but
true.
we're not going to raise the arithmetic opcodes by orders of magnitude.
I mean, yeah, but that's again. I mean, we don't want to have a brittle solution like that. That's the point of the proposal, is to not have to do this and be dependent on opcode pricing change.
Okay, I think I understand the proposal enough, and I looked in there and I didn't see the security consideration that you are mentioning. Um, so if you could add that to the EIP itself, I think that would help us understand a little bit better what it's
It
trying
is
to
inside.
accomplish.
It is there actually. I mean, maybe not security focused, but I mentioned the issue of Gnosis. I mean, I try to explain, but yeah, I could maybe do some talking about relayer in particular.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. I think that would help us like understand a little bit more what the main what like the exact main objective, because the simple summary is like what it wants to do, but it doesn't. There's like, are we missing? Is there a motivation section in here that I'm missing? I think this is using an older EIP. Um, what's it called? Template.
Format.
Yeah. So if you can look at this latest EIP template, the one for EIP1, there's other stuff that we've added now that help us really evaluate it a lot better. Um, so if you could change that up, and then the other suggestion is to talk to Alexi, only because there's a whole separate ETH1X meeting, and what they do is they talk about bigger sweeping changes to the 1.0 ecosystem, and if any of that's going to interact with any of the changes here, we just like to get those connections made.
Yeah, on that note, there was I don't know who posted it on at Magician about to remove the gas opcode, and I participated already in the conversation about gas.
Great.
But I could reach to Alexi. I don't know what the best way to reach to him. Or...
You can do that over Gitter.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But actually, we do have Wei on the call, and he's the author of Ungas.
Yes. But what was the question? Is there a question for me? Something?
Oh, we were just wanting if you had any commentary on the proposal that Ronan brought forward, EIP 1930, and how that would interact with Ungas, or like Martin mentioned, it would like be reverted after Ungas is implemented if we decide to implement it. Was that accurate?
Yeah, like my opinion is basically the same as Alexei. So it's kind of the, like in my honest opinion, I think it's the opposite direction we want to go to, because after, if we do those do those things like in this EIP, then it's even harder to later change gas costs, which will have bigger backward compatibility issues. So that's basically like my comments. And just looking through the specifications, so I just from the specification side, I think there are something that can be more more specified. For example, in the option A, it simply says add a new variant of codes. But we need to know what this new variant is and how much gas it costs, how that opcode actually works. Stuff
sure.
like
I think I will rather make sure I don't spend more time if we already decide that's not going to be, So I think I guess that was the reason why it was also cancelled for the last time. So I will not mind specifying more, even starting to implement it, but I will first want to have kind of an agreement that we go with it or not. And regarding Ungas, I just want to clarify something, because it won't add any extra. I would say, like, currently we have contracts that already ask for the gas amount. This one will be an issue for ungas, but this one actually doesn't require the contract to get the gas. It's a requirement of, so it means the EVM, yes, will need to get the gas, but not the contract itself. So is it not? I mean, I imagine that it's actually simpler to solve, or if at all. And I mean, and if it's the same, then I don't think it adds anything to what we already have. Because I mean, I don't see how it will add complexity to what we already have.
Anything with change is always added complexity.
No, but I mean, I'm talking about ungas. I mean,
Okay.
because ungas will have a harder problem with a contract that can do something based on the gas amount than something that just require it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so does the ungas proposal in its entirety go against meta transactions and like alarm clock, ETH alarm clock types services? I suppose it might. I mean, it's and then there's probably something that should be kind of brought forward. I wasn't actually aware that this was a thing. It hasn't been talked about for a while.
Can you post this onto the Gitter for like any reference or links for this, because it's kind of news to me for things that will break in ungas.
What do you mean? What?
Ronan, I can help you get connected up with Alex. Just message.
Okay.
Yeah, because at minimum, even if this doesn't go forward as an EIP, I think it's really important for other EIPs to understand the implications for meta transactions and other things like that to make it easier, on users and without adding too much complication to the overall client implementations. So, yeah, even if this doesn't go forward, thanks for bringing it up, Ronan, and we'll connect you with Alexi. Feel free to work on this and bring it back, but as it stands right now, it doesn't look like there's a lot of support for this because of in part because of the work on ungas, but go ahead and feel free to discuss it more with like Alexi and Wei and other people in the Gitter and everywhere else to see what we can come to with this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ronan.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next EIP we have is from Greg, listed as Gandalf on here. And it's EIP 2315, Simple Subroutines for the EVM. This one is up for EFI. And Greg, if you want to just go over real quick what it is, and then we'll have questions. And there's also an Ethereum Magicians link in here if people want to click on that too.
Yeah, and there's other discussion back when it was an issue, and that's linked back through the Magicians link, and a bit of discussion on the pull request. And basically, this is a totally stripped down 615. No validation, just providing the mechanism of call and return, just the mechanism. And any validation, any such is moved out of the VM to the next layer up for the time being. So it's just simply the mechanism that says I'm making a subroutine call. So I take the current instruction pointer and push it on a second stack, just like fourth. And when I need to return, I pop the stack and go back to where I was. That's it. The same call and return that most chips have had since there were chips. And that's about all there is to it. There's a draft PR against the Geth code base, which is fairly close to complete. I didn't try and implement all the test cases because that code was pretty scary. And
Yeah, and for test cases, normally those come up after an EFI is accepted or into the EFI list. So people don't waste time doing a bunch of stuff before it's like blessed, I suppose is the word we've
Mhm.
been using.
No, there's three test cases in the proposal. I mean, I didn't try to implement those in
Oh, I
Geth
see.
because the code for implementing the test cases was hard enough. I didn't want to try and understand it this week. But Martin reviewed that code. So I'd like to just hear from Martin what he thought. From my point of view, it was pretty easy going into a code base I never really looked at before. So that partly speaks to the quality of the code base. But what say you, Martin?
So yeah, so regarding the test cases, I'm not sure if so these are traces. Are these traces or the programs, or the kind of combined? I think it would be easier if you put the program bytecode or assembly in one thing, and then the kind of trace as another. So it would be easier to understand how the PC jumps when you execute the code. And one thing that I am wondering about right now is the return sub. Like in the first test case there, the data, you haven't filled in the return stack and it hits a return sub.
Oh, okay. We probably don't want to dive into these tests.
Right. But should the return sub
likely buggy?
should the return sub continue the execution after the jump sub? Is that the intention?
Yes, it's pretty much the same as a jump test in that sense.
No, it's not. It's like you have a virtual jump test right after your jump sub, right? It's something like that.
You jumped it. You can put it different ways, and they all work out about the same. But when you return to the place you started. That's just to maintain the sense that there is a target you can find. But when you get there, there's nothing left to do but increment the IP. And then the next time you come around the loop, you then you execute your next instruction.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this one seems a lot simpler than the previous one. I can give you that. I really don't have too much to say about this right now. Technically, it can be done. It adds one more stack, but so I'm kind of curious how big of an improvement and how much new cool things would this enable, and what do people feel about it?
Yeah, I don't know how many of these people show up on this call. And so people who want it go, it's obvious I really want it. And other people go, well, you don't really need it because you can play this complicated game of using using the existing stack and pushing things there. And then when you finish the routine, you've got to figure out how far away is the return address that I pushed on the main stack. And there's a whole class of bugs of overwriting the return address because it's on the same stack that you're computing with. So it's just a really old design in stack machines, going back to fourth at least, to say just have a separate stack for putting the return addresses on. It also makes it easier to do things like return more than one item. you're just not worried about overriding the return address, which is right there. And the test examples don't make that clear because they're intentionally really twisted up.
Just to zoom out a little bit on the status on its status as EFI, kind of going back to the first question. Casting my mind back to previously with the original EIP, the general feedback was that it's a good idea, but it's more complicated. There's more things going on that need to happen all up. Like it doesn't need to all happen at once. And then this is the response to that feedback. So in general, I think unless there's a that was the stipulation for that one. Now we're at this stage. Is there something from Geth or I guess we don't have anyone from Nethermind. Do we have someone from Nethermind here? Or
No.
Dano?
We got Dano here, Besu.
Yeah, from Besu. Do you have thoughts on this?
It looks relatively simple. I agree that the main concern with 615 is too much all at once. And this is a great first step. And yeah, I support it.
Then I'd say we should move it to EFI.
Yeah, that sounds good. Does anyone have any qualms about this not being an EFI and kind of moving forward? I echo what James said.
As for me, Peter couldn't make it to this call, unfortunately, and I just would like to revisit this. I mean, we can move it to EFI, but I think maybe we should. Yeah, I would like to get his thoughts about it as well.
I mean, we don't have to rush it to EFI by any means because, like, this
Yeah.
is pretty much a 90% EFI situation with just waiting for one core piece of feedback that we'd like to have from Peter.
Yeah.
And
I'm cautiously optimistic about it.
great. Greg, is it cool if we just wait for Peter to chime in either offline or because we can put things in EFI outside of the call, I think.
Yeah, this is so old at this point that a little more delay doesn't mean anything.
Okay. In that case, yeah, let's wait for Peter, and then we'll throw it in EFI if there's nothing major there.
Yeah, I'd also like to just have Nethermind talk about it too. So
that's a good idea.
I'll have Peter, Nethermind, and then I'll also talk to Alexi.
Okay.
As far as H1X, and then I'll report on those, and we can say that that's the stipulation for being added, and I feel comfortable to then make it to EFI.
Great.
Yeah. I just like to, the only thing is ECC is coming up, and then I'm going to take some vacation. And then I'm going to move to Kentucky. So I'll start getting pretty busy. But I'm not employed right now. So I have some time to put into this.
Hear that, internet? Hire Greg. He's a good guy.
No, but not for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah,
please.
give it some time.
Yeah, let us have some good time, Greg.
Okay, so thanks for that, Greg. Let's run through the next one. That's going to be EIP 1962. Alex Vlasov. If you want to give, I think, was this discussed last time as well? I think it was.
Yeah, it was discussed a few times over the last.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'm now. This is now coming back to me. But yeah, go ahead with any updates or explanations.
Well, updates were mostly internal, more or less changed binary interface a little to allow users to remove some restrictions and also to make some checks inside the precompile optional, because in most of the cases they're kind of not necessary for practical applications. But well, they're optional, so you can just specify one byte to turn them back on. Other than this, what's left right now is an integration. And also alternative implementation in Go, which doesn't use assembly. Said, who is maybe also here, but he's listening on the YouTube, he told me that it would take 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe I can help him to make it kind of faster. But right now there are 3 implementations in Rust and C++ 17 and in Go in assembly for x86-64, and all of them are consistent between each other in terms of results of fuzzy testing.
Okay, and James, do you know what do you remember what feedback was given, or Alex even, do you remember what feedback was given that halted this from getting into EFI?
I'm just going to come in because I have a very strong feeling against the CIP, and not against Alex's work, but against the scope and the CIP. I discussed with various people offline about it and expressed some major concern. Not on the quality of work of the matter and not on the need for the IP itself, but by the process it's getting through at this point.
Sure. So what's the
at this
concern?
point,
Or
it's
Martin?
not eligible for inclusion, right?
So it's in the list as far as to be discussed for EFI, is my understanding of what
Right,
today's
but
thing
anything
is.
can be in the list for that.
Yeah, it's not in EFI yet. This is for review to go into the list, right, James?
No, it is on the list already.
Oh.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
on the
man.
list
Why?
from before when it was talking about at this time.
Oh. You're right. I didn't look at the list correctly.
And
So
there's another piece. I was talking with Greg earlier this week who joined from looking at the transition to E2 and like I think it was the beacon contract, that BLS signatures or something that is also necessary. So I want to put that in the conversation.
BLS can be done today. I don't understand the whole discussion that happened. It can be done today.
It just depends on which curve you want your BLS
exactly.
signature.
So
And
exactly,
I think I think in terms of something which people want to poke with Ethereum 2.0, they want another curve for the signature.
I understand that, but my point is, and Alex, I'm talking because I think it's actually like you did a terrific job at this point, but when with the size of the CIP, I have a very big concern because things like we just like Windows just released a bug, and the NSA released the bug on the implementation of like any curve cryptography in Windows, and you're a single team, and bugs happen with Windows, and having this sort of gigantic precompile or served precompile inside the network is for me a risk of concern if it's not brought up slowly at a steady pace.
Yes, that was the reason. That was the reason why people asked for fuzzy testing from the beginning, and this is the reason why we have it kind of running all the time, and especially after some kind of minor changes in binary interfaces. And it's also the reason why we have now 3 independent implementations, which are consistent.
Alex, I'm hearing it. That said, I just want to bring it up because there is another EIP. So this concern I'm expressing right now, I kind of tried to express it before when I asked you last time about the auditing part and having an independent team looking at the implementation, looking at the specification, looking at the API, and so offline, there was a proposal from Jordi. I don't know if you saw it about Baby Job Job. 2494.
No, I didn't. No,
so
I didn't.
Jordi Valina, who's like one of the founder of ID3 and also part of the cryptographic Ethereum community, I would say, proposed recently 2494, which is implementation on specific elliptic curve that is used inside Snark as implemented currently on today's network. I reached out to him about your EIP and asked him about his opinion and also if there would be a way to join effort between your EIP and like their EIP to see if there is a way to find like sort of collaborative ground there. He was supposed to join today. Apparently he didn't. I pinged him before. But my point here is having such a big precompile and with such a tremendous, assumption beyond it, for me it needs to be very carefully handled, and as carefully being independent implementation, independent team, independent scoping of the path to integration.
Well, when you say independent implementation, the Go implementation is actually independent.
What do you mean
just
by
independent? It means it's done by a person who is outside of the matter and done all by himself.
Okay, and can
So
you share
the only help I provided to Said is like how to start the fuzzy tester. Everything else he did all by himself, without any advice from my side.
Okay,
So this is in terms of independent implementation. For implementing specific curve, I don't. Well, I can try to quickly Google for George's proposal, but
it's very simple. You just want to have baby jab inside it.
Yeah, well, it's first of all, baby jab is an adverse curve, and this is like even while twisted adverse curves are believed to be kind of much not simpler to implement. They're simpler to implement in constant time. This curve is very specific. It's only for hashing and doesn't give kind of a lot of benefits. It just allows you to use algebraic hashes in Ethereum for a chip. This precompile is more or less. This precompile is more or less to allow broader scope. It's everything from recursive snarks to newer constructions like Halo and which all started to kind of emerge. I give it broader overview for all the developers who are not just in the field of snark cryptography. For all the constructions which happen to kind of come up in the last half a year. So it's just a difference between two precompiles.
I know perfectly. My point is not about the need of ECIP. My point is more about like as if there happened to be a bug, a DDoS attack. Look, the very fact that it was implemented just by you guys makes it an attack vector. Because I'm assuming because
this is the reason why we have an independent implementation right now.
Yeah,
I'm very
I think
Martin
did it. Martin can speak to the fact of, like, can Martin, if you're wanting to, could you speak to what the situation would be if there was a DDoS vector from this precompile discovered, like what we've done in the past as far as just kind of fixing it, I guess?
Yeah. So typically we would get on a call with the core developers of like the clients. And by core developers in this sense, I mean people who actually commit code to the clients. And the problem with these kind of precompiles, and we had a similar problem with one of the BN precompiles, is that it's not our domain. And if something were to go wrong, like either a consensus issue where, it happened that the Go implementation was different than the Rust implementation, or if there was some vulnerability where, I don't know, the gas calculation was too intense or some vector, there's basically nothing we could do because we would scratch our heads and not understand a single thing because it's not our domain. And this EEP scares me a lot. And I'm not even talking about the possibility of cryptographic errors. That scares me less. I'm more scared about denial of service or consensus issues. And like if the precompile erroneously calculates something, that's at least layer 2.
Well, in terms
that
of
vector as well.
Yeah, well, in terms of like very trivial mistakes on like a DOS attacks, there are no infinite loops, obviously, inside this precompile. All the loops are bounded, and like upper bounds were used in gas price estimates. I have already proposed that I can just introduce an arbitrary factor of like 1.5 everywhere for security. Now, when the precompile is already optimized compared to the previous, like to the old values for gas pricing, it now actually already runs faster than it kind of wants an amount of gas to be paid to it. So for this part, I'm much less concerned. My concern was about indeed the consensus between different implementations. But as kind of the experience of the last months with fuzzy testing with Say together and working with him, it's not that large of an issue. Most of the errors which we found during the fuzzy testing and discrepancy were actually in not in underlying formulas or arithmetics or anywhere. It was in a binary interface, which we then fixed, and like arithmetic errors are, I think we only encountered one between different implementations over all the fuzzy testing, and just because we used the different algorithms.
So when we're kind of doing a risk versus reward here, this is going to enable a lot more use cases, enable a lot more different curves that can be used for some of the new Snark and Stark stuff that's happening. At the same time, then Martin's saying and Luis are saying that is risky because if there is an attack of any kind using it, we would be a little out of the loop because it's out of our knowledge domain. But one thing we can do to appease that in a way is to have people who are in that domain be involved in a little more tighter into the response team. I guess we don't really have a name for it, but like
So I can give you the name. I mean,
I just saw that it's obvious and it's my responsibility to be there during the such calls if the precompile is included, and it's
sure,
at least in a first time. I just obviously thought it's my responsibility, but like I can definitely do this. I was
yeah,
going to do this anyway.
Alex, can I offer a solution here for the next call? Could you bring Zach from Aztec because you talk about Plonk? Can you bring Isaac from Coda to talk about recursive, and also reach out to Jordi to see about how your to propose or how if IIP could be merged into yours? I think there would be like a way to solve this.
For
The risk
Jordi, I
concern.
will talk to him, but unfortunately, from what I understand, our EIPs are kind of orthogonal. You can do Jordi's one with mine with like
Exactly.
very artificial tricks. You can just transform one curve into another one, but this is pure technicality. It doesn't address.
So you're right.
I can ask Zach and Isaac to join, but I mean, I obviously cannot guarantee that they will find a time, but I will invite them.
yeah, that'd be great if you
I
could
mean,
invite them for sure.
I mean, my point is that if you want to bring like MNT, like like Coda's curve, the only one at this point today, out of today, that use those curve, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I'm aware of, is Isaac. And I mean, if that's for them to use for.
Well, here I should correct your impressions that when I say the precompile says kind of MIT curves as an example, it's basically just one type of the pairings of the particular structure of the curve. What the kind of the same stuff can be done, like this is a Zexy curve, for example, Zexy construction.
Yeah.
Will also be supported, even while it's non-recursive. Newer constructions from EY, Ernst and Young,
Yes,
they're also going to be like it's more or less a general overview, and especially if people listen to us on YouTube, so they can understand the stuff a little.
No, of course, I know they do. That's why I mean, for instance, I know that Mohamed El Husni from EY. I mean, if not, I mean, I don't know if he's aware, but last time I talked to him, I wasn't sure he got involved, and I'm pretty sure he would be interested. My point is, I guess you're right. This EIP is useful. I agree with you. My only concern at this point is in the process, meaning that you'll be the only one having an eye on it. And what I'm expressing right now is trying to find a way for this quorum of people to be convinced that this can get in without any concern, because we have all the specialists in the field today, in the community today, that can vouch for it, because they're going to use it.
I think the threshold is a bit different. I don't think it needs to come in with like very very little concern, because that's just impossible for many precompiles unless they're very 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 simple to come in without some level of concern. But I think if there are just solid, I don't know, I'd feel better from my, like, when I've responded to incidents, knowing who to call. And that's, Alex just
Uh,
said that we would be him. We
Yeah.
could also find other people, and
yeah,
that would make me
I
feel better.
should I should add to this that a few times before it, I kind of for ease of developer, like for ease of kind of integration and roll up of this precompile, I was kind of trying to mention that there is an option you can do it in kind of two waves.
Hmm.
In the first one, we just kind of make a whitelist. As Louis was saying, that kind of the set of the curves which are used, it's not very like which are well known and most likely well known by the community. It's not very wide. It's more or less we can make a list of 10 curves which are allowed to use. It's still the same code base. It's just one additional check at the entry point that, well, these curve parameters are in a whitelist. And for those, well, those are kind of explicitly checked for arithmetics. If you call for this curve, it definitely works. But I didn't ever get any like strong feedback on whether this option is
Yeah, does anyone
kind
have
of
strong feedback
should
on
we
that? Because
try
that sounds like a good
to
idea.
do this?
That sounds like a good idea to me, but would that quell anyone's concerns who've had concerns over the security of this so far?
Well, I mean, it's kind of less surface for exposure in terms of this set of curves. It's just like it's the same code base which works with them, so it's just still the same precompile, which you can kind of test, battlefield test, with the first wave of just a whitelist of 10, like 10, 12 curves maximizing. If it works well, and we check this, we continue to work in this. Then we just leave this, just remove this whitelist, either in a very small hard fork or just in a part of the next hard fork, and then we're just good. It just allows people to get used to it and see like what would be potential problems.
So I can see there's value in implementing. I can also see that we don't have a process for really implementing something. So as far as stuff like how to get you involved in the security team if something happens, like what are the processes for that? If you could help us come
Yeah,
up with the process
I
that
can.
an EIP like yours should have to be included, then I think that's a good way for helping us get
Sure. I mean, it's not more or less on my side. I just thought that it is my obvious responsibility to be there for a time when it's included and like people start using it and see what people can make up and attack it.
Yeah,
I just don't know how the security team works. I hear that it's kind of exists, but I never been a part of this and never seen it working. So if
yeah.
you just
I can.
invite
I
me into
can.
there,
I
I'm
can get
glad
you
to join.
included in that for sure. That's not a
and
huge
then
Okay.
problem.
and then let's make a process, like document how this process works, or make one of those, I forgot the acronym that Peter suggested on how this happens, so then other people who want to do something that would require something similar would know what needs to happen.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good idea. Let's take that offline for the new process creation. Martin,
Thank you.
Louise,
Yeah.
do y'all have any final comments on this?
I'd rather take this offline and
Sure.
bring. I think we should bring also the people we were mentioned, Jordi, Zach, Isaac, and Mohammed from UI, to come and comment on their ability both to like judge the quality of the API and the code, and also in their current need and what they feel about such a wide IP.
Yeah.
Well,
So getting that completely across is
as for
good.
me,
There is
I
one.
commented.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Martin.
So I was going to say, so I commented the last time this was up for discussion, E962, before, I don't know, 2 forks ago. And I still think the same way I did then, that it's too big thing to jam into Ethereum, and it's not something we should spend more effort on. So I'm against it, but that's just me.
And Martin, just I'm curious, does the like having a whitelist that just have 10 calls change your opinion slightly or not at all?
Yes, slightly. But every time I try to look into it, like now I'm browsing around and I'm come to gas schedule, and it's like I never see very seldom see concrete actual specifications like I'm used to when I'm browsing EAPs. It's a lot of text and a lot of mathematical language that assume that the reader knows a lot of definitions that are apparent to the author, but the specification, I do not think it is possible for anyone to write this EAP based on the existing specifications. The only way to do it would be to have the Rust or Go code side by side and then convert line by line or function by function. But otherwise, yeah, so I think it's very big, very vague, and obviously very complex, and not in my colleagues' field of expertise. So
Yeah, is there?
Yeah, well, if you have comments for like style of writing, which can be more understandable for people not in the field, because I still try to use more or less kind of standard notation of and if variable calls this way, I just use the same name everywhere. But if you have this, you can just post it in a Gitter or something like personal
like
message in Gitter.
like if you look at the gas schedule for EAP 1962, it has a section called complex model evaluation rules, and yeah, so it doesn't tell me how to. I'm, for example, I'm curious. What is the complexity of doing a gas calculation? Because someone can call into this thing, and with insufficient amount of gas, do we need to do a lot of calculations in order to determine that the gas is insufficient? So I can't even like
of
model in my
course you
head how
don't
difficult this
need
is.
to. Well, in terms of the gas model, it's actually quite simple. Basically, you just need to determine how much arithmetic work you do in the future, and the set of parameters is quite short for every case.
Right. So, but
so
why
you,
is
yeah,
there
yeah. So it,
like 2
as
pages of text describing this instead of just a specification?
Martin,
well,
I have a question
I just
about
try
the
to be
EIP.
expressive, but yeah, I mean, this formula is basically the polynomial lookup. Every kind of parameter gives the effect up to some formula with explicit coefficients in separate JSON files.
Martin, I have a question for you. I'm going to post the Jordi's Balina as a EIP, like EIP, like not EIP actually. I have to do the wrong file, but it's EIP that of Jordi and the formatting of it. Could you have a look and tell me if that's would be clear on your eyes? Like, would be something that should be comfortable with? In that case, Alex could converge with Jordi to optimize. I know Jordi is interested in this new IP, Alex. That's why I'm bringing it up, because I discussed with him offline, and he has similar concern about the formatting of the proposal. So the reason I'm asking Jordan Martin is to see if that formatting is good enough for him, so we can find like a way to cross bridge here.
Yeah, and actually that's a good idea, because if the formatting that they're using for the baby jub curve is like more clear, then yeah, if you could converge on that style, that'd be nice. Also, I saw that Kobe is working with you. I could consider Kobe a good resource. Did he actually help write the EIP or just work on the implementation with you?
No, well, Kobe didn't work on the implementation, more or less some feedback in principle. Uh, I just, I mean, Kobe would most likely just look at the spec and will not have any questions. So
Oh yeah, no,
like,
no. I
he
was only
can.
gonna, I was only gonna ask because,
We have the same idea of Kobe, yes.
yeah, he wouldn't have, yeah, but he might have something to say about the EIP language, I would think, but it's been a bit since I've talk to him, so I don't know how busy he is.
Well, yeah, I'm just looking at the Georgie's proposal, and I think it's still as difficult for people to understand that baby Chicap is a twisted reverse curve, which is operationally equivalent to the Montgomery curve, which is still fine for people who are in the field, but completely useless information for people who are not.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think it's kind of more the same language of complexity. I will try to simplify it myself if people don't shoot me a feedback, but I mean, it's not trivial, but underlying formulas, as soon as you can get into them, is actually quite trivial.
I have a question for the old attendee of the core dev. What happened? How did you manage to get AltBN into ETH? What was the process? Who pushed it, and how did it work?
This is when we got the alt BN curve before. Wait, am I on mute? Let me see. Which curve are you talking about?
I'm talking the current precompile for Snark on Ethereum today.
It's old in 2018, I think.
That was
Maybe
a collaboration.
There is no even record of this.
Yeah, no, there's record. It was a collaboration between what is now the Electric Coin Company and the Ethereum Foundation at the time, to implement the same curve that was used in Zcash at the time. I think they changed now.
Did change.
And
Yes, they did change.
They did change. Okay, and that was basically engineers coordinated with the C++ team, and they made it. And then I'm fuzzy on the rest of it. Does anyone who was there back then, maybe Martin, know what happened after that?
So I can't recall the details about who were involved, but it was a lot of work.
I do remember it was a year. It was a lot of work, as I do remember it that way. And it was, I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that more simple than this? This kind of huge, like
By
getting all.
an order of magnitude.
It's intrinsically
Yes.
simple because it's just a single curve.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like it still took a long time, but because it was a single curve and there was some understanding, I think we had a cryptographer at the time, Daniel, working more for us, who helped a little, I think. So there was basically it's not that there was any shortcuts taken back then. It was just a more simple EIP, and there was like collaboration from another company with our team that did understand the curve. I think it was Christian Reitwieser's team.
And it did ship with something that could have caused a consensus issue on mainnet.
Yeah, you have mentioned this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does that answer your question, Luis?
It does. So could we maybe get someone from foundation who both write code and understand the cryptography to attest for it? Like someone, I don't know if Justin write codes or I don't know, invent Vitalik.
Do we have anybody who does that? Maybe
Christian Reitwieser, maybe.
Okay, we could have him look at it or something. Yeah, let's talk about that on Gitter. I don't want to take too much more time on this, but we definitely don't want to have this go into the abyss or anything like that with all this work done on it.
I do not neither. Just want to specify this from it doesn't come from the need for the CIP. I think it's a fantastic one, and just afraid for the way it is shipped and not as like the matter's fault. I'm specifying once again.
Yeah, we just need a plan. Okay, well, thank you, Alex, and everybody for commenting. And you have some to-dos right now, Alex, or?
There's still one more thing I think to talk about for this.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
The ETH2 deposit contract was hoping to use this EIP in the contract.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I also propose the whitelist, that you can just specify, whitelist will definitely just take the Ethereum 2.0 curve. And then we can start this way. It will satisfy everyone more or less, and it's going to be very small exposure surface.
Are they using the new BLS curve that like Filecoin's using and stuff like that? Or am I getting confused?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're on the new standard. Sorry, that was me who posted the issue. We're using the new standard, the one that Carl worked a lot to kind of like help coordinate.
Which Carl?
Carl B.
Okay, Zekin, got it.
Yeah, And last time I spoke with everybody, the existing BLS signature verification that's available would not suffice, and I believe it is because of the curve. It's the point on the curve.
Um,
Now,
um,
so yeah, I want to make
do
this as quick as possible, personally. So yeah, you were saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we go into some a little technical details, like PLS curve verification should be available in both options on this curve, whether you aggregate kind of individual signatures either in G1 or G2, or the arithmetic is there, so it's like whatever standard you use.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 So that's part of the reason I brought this up. I just want to double check. I want to try and figure out kind of one thing here. Like, does 1962 does cover us? Does it exist according to everyone else? The existing one does not. This is from like researchers on E2, and I've done my own kind of investigation. I think it does not. So the other question I kind of had was, if 1962, based on today's conversation, seems to need a lot more work, would it be feasible for me to simply create a standalone EIP that covers the BLS verification we need? Simply because the deposit contract currently has like, there's 4 main checks that we can do, and the one check we don't have is the verification. So having that check would be quite crucial, as it means we wouldn't have to revert a deposit like down the road.
From this perspective, if I may advise you, or make your life simpler, I can just expose you one interface to just work on one specific curve. If you like really want a simple separate precompile that does only BLS 12 curve verification, kind of what is existing right now, because just if it makes your life easier.
Can we have Greg? Can you ask someone to come on to the next call who's really into that, like Carl, to give us some color on this? Okay, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, I'll get Carl. Or I know there's a few others that I was chatting with.
Could
I'm
Justin
kind of the
speak
one
to
that's
it?
just yeah. I'll get them to come speak on behalf of that.
Okay, that'd be cool.
Because I know like Alex Stokes as well was very, very interested and
Stokes,
keen on
yeah,
this as
he
well.
could come on.
Yeah. So I'll get them to come on next time to chat about the differences. I know there's things between the current one was questionable on the gas as well. I was like, how much gas is in use, because the contract already kind of consumes quite a bit. But yeah, based on today's call already on like the pushback on 1962, I think a kind of separate discussion needs to occur anyway.
Great.
So I just want to react on Greg's remark. The remarks we have on that on 1962 would probably apply to a new EIP that just came out right now. I mean, I'm talking as inclusion for Berlin. Actually, we're probably more confident with like some group of people working on improving, reducing, scoping 1962 than just come up with a new project from the bottom.
Yeah, that sounds like the direction it'd be going in at minimum.
Yeah, like the whitelisting.
Yeah,
Okay,
that sounds good for me.
Let's
yeah, cool.
Bring them on next
Ultimately,
time.
the big one is we just need to like squeeze something in, if possible. Again, this is like kind of what I'm asking, if it's possible to squeeze something in the next like 2-3 months. Simply because we then have to like kind of get the contract re-audited with the new edition. It should only be like 2 lines.
Oh, is it already in audit right now?
We've actually finished it, yeah. So like it's great. So we already have the audit. So we would just have to get them to redo like 2 lines, which isn't like the end of the world. Problem is the contract's in Viper, but I might just have it rewritten in like bytecode to make it easier to audit. Because they're all like, oh, we need Viper compiler. I'm just like, that's silly. Like, just do it straight up.
Yeah, there was some discussion on that I saw. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's have people come on next time. Alex, if you could come on again and potentially bring some of the people Louis said, that we'll have this be a major topic next time, so we can kind of get this through without too much more commentary, and make sure everyone feels as comfortable as they can.
Perfect.
Okay, next
Sounds good.
one. We only have 15 more minutes left, so let's run through these. EIP 2315. Did we already do that one?
Yep, it was twice on the agenda, so you can skip
Oh,
the next one.
nope. One
Yep.
of the times it was mistyped 2135. That's why it's okay. I got it. EIP 2046 is it's not.
Alex isn't on today.
Okay. We can skip that one then.
I'd like to voice a couple concerns on it so we can get it up forward a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Yes, please.
First, we need to have some clear definition on what the precompiles are. There was other stuff to try and give a larger range to say it's the first 1,000. It does say
So
the
he
existing,
does
but
reference that in the EAP.
right. But does it? We should reference going forward that it's going to also imply all future gains. We're going to do that, or we should specify a range. My second concern is we're probably going to need to reprice the existing precompiles because they're all gas based on the 700 call as far as the impact on the rest of the VM. So I want to see some stats as to what those repricings ought to be. So those are my two concerns. So we can get some feedback on at least initially.
Great. That sounds like good feedback.
I just have a question, which just for it's at least for journal clarification.
Sure.
I had an impression that also precompiles, like EC recover, addition and multiplication of the VM curve, and I think also hash functions, in the way how the gas prices was metered, was without including the coal price.
Say that last part again. It cut out.
I mean, for all the existing precompiles, at least for a small set of them, for which I kind of look at the code, my impression was that they were metered without a coal price. So without the 700 gas on top.
Good question.
Yeah. Dana,
the
where'd you get
answer
your
is
info
yes.
for that? That they're based
But
on
I
the
did get
700.
info from that,
Oh,
They were measured without 700.
including the Blake precompile that just went in, because that's like one per round. That's incredibly cheap.
Yes.
But the Blake precompile is extremely expensive comparing to Ketchak, for you to be honest. Blake is supposed to be 2 times faster than Ketchak, almost.
I would feel better if we had
Um,
some stats showing that we're not going to break the meter if we just get rid of the call.
Right. Yeah, definitely we should do more benchmarks. But yeah.
yeah. You're referring
I
to.
have a question actually
Yeah.
about the moving. Excuse me. Sorry. From moving from 700 to 40. I know in the past it was questioned to go to 0 because it was like that at the beginning. What prevent us from just going to 0?
Why would it cost 0? There is a context switch going on.
So, but we are talking about precompiled, meaning they are supposed to be available pretty fast. Couldn't we
So
just
currently, the only thing we have which costs 0 are jump tests and stops. And doing a precompile is more work than doing nothing at all.
So when I say 0, I mean I'm talking
I think
pricing
you should
it.
at least consider the fact that you need to do the gas metering and then subtract this price.
I think in that case, it was more into pricing it into the precompile itself.
Yes, but then you need to actually do the gas calculation. So you need to enter the gas calculation of that precompile. And before doing so, you have an upfront cost of, in this case, 40, and currently 700. But you need to offset the cost of doing the gas cost calculation at the minimum. You need to cover that. Does that make sense?
It does. It's just that, for instance, in the case of Blake, which is supposed to be like cheap faster than Ketchak, it makes it not economically relevant to use Blake except for Zcash purposes.
One round of Blake shouldn't be cheaper than addition.
One run of Blake should be cheaper than Ketchak.
Right, but one round of Blake would be one gas, and that's cheaper than addition and subtraction.
Yeah. So one run, okay, one Blake 2B, the compression is 12 round in any case. So it would be still, you would still have like a cost of the first part and the last part being in the contract, but the compression function is for Blake 2B 12 round, which would be 12 gas, which is roughly what you have for in relation to K-Check, without the two combining part that you have to actually get the correct output.
I'm thinking we should time box this one and
Yeah,
realize that all of them, most of them are not totally priced, totally accurate. Pointing at one versus the other.
Yeah, and
I think we
should
Yeah,
fix that.
I mean, Ketchak is an opcode, and it just muddies the water a bit. Yeah, it makes things strange.
There should be we should have a good effort in the future to like have more than just a couple people like running the benchmarks needed for this stuff, because it sounds like there's a lot of history being lost in how some of this came to be. But yeah, let's time box this. Can we? Let's just bring this discussion together, because maybe even more voices can bring more clarity to some of this, as Louise's question. All right, that's the end of the EFI list. Let's talk about the next upgrade timing. That's going to be James.
Oh, well, the point of getting these EIPs to discuss today was to figure out where, if any of these are considering when they will be ready. So we're in this kind of I think you were going to say.
Oh yeah, I was going to say is the only ones I'm looking at this, and it looks like Greg's looks easy. 2315. If it gets in the EFI in the next 2 weeks, I see that being easy, honestly, but I'm not an implementer. And then the bigger one that would like make a huge difference for like ETH2 would be 1962. So in my opinion, we should focus the next meeting on figuring out if that should go in the next hard fork, and if so, how long like implementation and testing would take, considering the fact that fuzz testing has somewhat gone on already, not within the Ethereum clients, but within the code for that was specified in the EIP and then brought into Rust Go and I think C++. So, what do people think about that? What do people think about Greg's EIP and 1962 as far as like implementation time? Dana, we can start with you if you have any thoughts on that.
Sorry, I was eating breakfast. I was a bit distracted.
Oh, no problem. So the 1962 and Greg's EIP, the one for the reduced for the simple subroutines, separately, how long do you think those would take as far as implementation? Is that something that should feasibly be in the next hard fork?
Subroutines are relatively easy. Those would be like a week or two tops. Most of it's spent writing reference tests. 1962 is a bit more of a wild card. We need to decide if we're going to bring in the Rust native libraries or try and find our own. Even then, there's going to be deeper build issues bringing in the native stuff, integrating that. So 1962 as a whole, I mean, it would take 2 to 4 weeks at the minimum, I think. I don't know, just spitballing it without looking at the details.
Sure.
Yeah, just depending on your like build and infrastructure, you can either use Rust with a C-like interface, which is already provided, or just build C++. Also,
and to complicate it, we're going to get pressure from Hyperledger to try and use encryption from their Ursa library. So that might change our workflow.
Okay, and then Martin, do you have any thoughts on Greg's one or 1962 for inclusion within the next hard fork?
No, I don't.
Okay, we can.
Well, I mean, Greg's one seems pretty simple, but yeah, the other one is wildcard.
Okay. then we can wait till next meeting. Um,
The other
'Cause-
one I think has potential to be ready is Danos EIP, that we talked about the last. You weren't here for the last call, but we talked quite a bit about it,
oh, okay.
and that I think
The validated contracts or the timestamp?
the timestamp.
Yeah, I think that one might be something we want to try for this one. The timestamps, I think we need to hold off another cycle and see what stateless needs for the validated contracts. But I think the timestamp is, and I was hoping that Jason Carver would have been on here so we could discuss what his issues are, because I think there's some conflicting concerns with the binary searches and the multiple blocks going back, and that some details need to get hashed out. Implementation wise, it doesn't look too difficult, but it's the spec wise to make sure everyone's happy with it that I think is going to be the longer pull getting it in from Berlin.
And what EIP number is the one with the timestamp?
2456.
This is for the people taking.
Okay, I'm looking at the EFI and I don't see much else that like feasibly could go into a next hard fork except if ProgPow stuff gets worked out.
And Andre's gonna join next week.
Oh, good. Okay. Because someone needs to push that along if they want to. What was that?
Sorry, not about ProgPow. But I know 1559 is one that there's been a recent PR for, and it also seems like everyone is in the community is like assuming this is going to happen. So it's almost like a given right now, and personally I'm a bit concerned by that because it's not one we've discussed much on this call. So I'm curious if people have any updates or opinions or thoughts they want to share about that. And I think on the last call they said they would have to go over 2 upgrades. So especially given that, is there a possibility we get the first part of it in the next upgrade, and what would that look like?
Is that a 1x question?
Well, I can speak to that.
Oh, good.
Because they've made it so it's 1 fork, but then it has 2 activations, but you don't need to have. So so it wouldn't be like you need multiple forks to implement it. They've changed that. Where for me, the more complex something is in the ecosystem, the longer I think it should be on a testnet. And so normally 6 weeks, okay, cool, great for a testnet. But I think something like EIP 59 would need to be on Robston for a longer period of time to make sure that gas and all of those things still works as intended. And so I would say it should go to the next one, not this one.
So here's a really controversial proposal. Should we say that we have the Berlin upgrade, which has the 3 EEPs we just mentioned? Is there a scenario where we can have Berlin, like have that 1559 go live on Robston, either with Berlin or shortly after, so that we get, however much time we need planning the next upgrade of testnet data on it? Because I guess what I'm trying to say is that otherwise, if we're always going to need more time on testnet for that EEP, then we're going to either delay an entire upgrade because of that, or the other alternative is we just have a 1 EEP fork on a testnet to try it out. But yeah, if it's in a spot where it could go live on the testnet sooner rather than later, maybe it makes sense to do that all at the same time or very close to each other.
So my concern, if there's a risk that we're going to significantly change the EIP after we go on Robston, maybe Robston's not the right testnet. Maybe we should spin up a new testnet just for fee market. And the problem with spinning up a new testnet is getting the sufficient smart contract traffic to get people to use it. So I like the idea of separating it from Berlin and possibly giving it its own fork. But if my concern is if we're not certain about, we're just going with finer little details, putting it on Robston might be risky because we haven't pulled anything off of Robston that wasn't an emergency like Constantinople was, I think, the only time we did that.
Hey Trent, does Whiteblock's new testing framework simulate smart contract data once a testnet's spun up so we can like simulate that crap?
It will in the future. I'd have to double check to see what our current feature set is, but that's definitely something we've been thinking about actively and kind of trying to integrate into the platform.
Cool. Let us know if it happens.
Sure. Yeah, I'll double check with Zach and see where we're at on that.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we're out of time. So we'll think about this more, probably talk about it on Gitter. One thing that I feel bad that we didn't get to, let me find it real quick if I can. Oh, here we are. The Open RPC standards that Zach came on for. Sorry we didn't get to that. That'll be at the top of our list next time. But if you do want 30 seconds to just say what you wanted to talk about so people could start thinking about it, that'd be cool.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Hudson. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm here about OpenRPC. Yeah, I just wanted to address any questions and concerns that you guys had brought up in your previous call. Maybe clarify what OpenRPC is, what OpenRPC isn't. But since I only have about 10 seconds, I'd suggest just having a look at what we have at open-rpc.org. And that's probably a good place to start. But the general idea is that we're building a service specification language based around JSON RPC. Yeah, so thanks anyways, but I guess we'll chat next week if somebody's available.
That'd be perfect. Yeah, if you're able to come or someone you want to send, that'd be fine. We'll put it on the agenda for next week.
Cool.
2 weeks.
All right. Thank
you.
you.
2 weeks. Sorry. That's right. Okay. Thanks everybody. We don't have time to review the previous decisions or anything like that. And
maybe sorry.
Go ahead.
One final thing that will happen mostly async. But James, you had a PR to EIP1.
Oh yeah, let's do that. What's up with that?
So the list of EFI, this came up because on 2378, the eligible for inclusion, it has some information about how the process works. And after some discussion with Alex, we realized that all of that kind of meta information about how things work should all be in EIP. So people have a consistent way to find it, and it exists as a single source of. I made a pull request to EIP1 that includes a table of contents. That also includes, it adds part of the eligible for inclusion and what that piece is. And then it also has some of the, Alex had a meta EIP called EIP 233, which is the formal process of hard forks. I took the meta information from that and also added it to EIP1. And the rest is
Great. So there's a link to that at agenda item 4, 4.1, I guess, or 4.I, for people if they could look and add comments to that. There's also an EIP-IP meeting next Wednesday, we think. Again, if you want to be added to that, reach out to me. I can add you to the Telegram chat that has the Zoom link. I think it's like an hour or two after the meeting time that this usually is. It's like 1500 UTC on every other Wednesday. And this third one is this upcoming Wednesday. So if you want to join that, reach out to me. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.